Welcome into the Tailgate Show. I am your host, Patricia Caputo. Joining me today is Andre Champagne and Tiger TV's Louis DeVita. How are you all today?
I'm doing well. What about you?
I'm doing good. I'm happy to be on the show. Thanks for having me, guys. It's a big week for LSU football, first road SEC. Excited.
It is, of course. We're so happy that you are here. We're going to give our breakdown and the analysis of the LSU versus Auburn game. LSU will take on Auburn in Jordan-Hare Stadium at 6 o'clock. This will be LSU's first road game of the season. Just to give some insight, both teams are 3-1, but there are plenty of differences within this team. Let's talk about a little bit about last week with this LSU team. They defeated New Mexico 38-0 in a shutout win. Andre, what improvements did we see in this offensive line for LSU last week?
Right, I saw a lot of improvements last weekend against New Mexico. We saw Charles Turner do really well at center, and then the freshman tackles just continue to impress. I liked how our line communicated well last weekend, and by that I mean when somebody wasn't blocking someone, our guys were smart. They went and helped out. So I like that, and then we saw our guys pick up the blitz pretty well.
Louis?
I was really happy to see the improvement as far as just allowing the run game to kind of blossom. Armani Gunwin had a really good game last week. It's really good to see these guys start to come into their own. Yeah, there's still a lot of questions going forward because injuries and stuff like that, but definitely this past week was a big improvement.
That's what I like to see from the offensive line. I love to see the blocking improve. Miles Frazier was the guy that struggled early on after transferring from FIU over the offseason, but he seemed to have pulled it together, has been getting better at blocking. Also, the penalties, they've seemed to have limited them to a certain degree. The snap infractions were a big thing against Mississippi State. There was a point in the beginning of the game where the entire offensive line was offsides. Those mistakes seem to be cleaned up. But there's another challenge that this LSU offensive line faces this week, as their center, Garrett Dellinger, now has a broken hand and will miss this weekend's game. So, in response to that, Brian Kelly is moving Miles Frazier to left guard. What do we expect to see Frazier with this position change, Andre?
Yeah, we saw a lot of, him with playing in the right guard position, so it shouldn't change too much because he's just going to another guard spot on another side. He played left guard at FIU. He also played left tackle at FIU. So we should be pretty much completely fine. I'm just more worried about, depth at center. We might, if Turner does go down, we'll probably see Fitzgerald West.
I'm just really excited to, it's good to have flexibility to be able to play both guard spots. And I definitely think if he's able to do that, it's definitely going to make him a more flexible player. And especially if another player goes down or if this hand injury continues to be an issue, it's going to, open up more opportunities.
What we've seen from Miles Frazier is that he is a better tackle than he is a guard. But you have a guy like Campbell on that left side. So they put Miles Frazier there. He has the experience there at right guard. It is the best move for this LSU offense to go in and put Frazier in, who at least has some experience. It's not like you're putting in a freshman. But that Charles Turner is a big issue because if he does go down, the only person that we could see possibly at center is Fitzgerald West, who is another freshman. That'd be 3 freshmen on the offensive line. But just to speak about Garrett Dellinger for a minute, credits to him because he almost did play. Brian Kelly said he had surgery on Wednesday on his hand and that it was a slim chance that he was going to play because after looking at it, they decided that it probably wasn't the best move. But he is trying to go out there and give his all. Unfortunately, it just will not be for this week. As a result of that, does this offensive line, because of its changes, have more penalties?
I don't think so, to be honest. We saw a lot of that last weekend. So I think after last week, the line's going to have it cleaned up after a whole week, of fixing that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. As long as the O-line continues to mature as far as, due diligence when it comes to keeping the penalties, it's obviously want to get it lower the amount of penalties, but we just went out and proved that we can win with that many penalties. You obviously don't want that many penalties, and we're opening up facing our first road SEC opponent. So obviously there's going to be different elements added to that. So I definitely think they're headed in the right direction. It's just staying consistent. Consistency is a big thing.
Similar to what you said, Louis, is that what I could see drawing penalties is just that they're on the road. There is no purple and gold, or not a ton of purple and gold in the stands this weekend, as they are away at their first true road game, especially against an SEC opponent, and especially one in Auburn, which we know has a long history of some battles and some weirdness going on, which we will talk about at the end of the show. Let's move on to the quarterback. Jayden Daniels, we've mentioned this before, he's been such a huge asset for this LSU team, but last week against New Mexico, he did look a bit rattled. He seemed to just have trouble reading some defenses, throwing passes. He does have a back strain, but is expected to play, so possibly that could have been a result. But he's playing in his first road game. He was originally at Arizona State in the Pac-12, so very different from going from the Pac-12 to now an SEC road game. Does this cause him to make the mistakes we have not seen yet this season?
So y'all know I'm hard on Jayden Daniels.
You are.
But I'm going to say he's going to go off this weekend. I think he's going to surprise us just because he's going to pass it more than he often does. I don't think him playing in his first SEC game is going to be the factor because, he's got the experience. He's got it all. He's been on the road in the Pac-12, which isn't the same, but he just has that laser-sharp just focus. And he just needs to bring that to the guys, like the freshmen on our team, the guys that haven't been in that environment. He needs to just say, hey, guys, we need to shut it out, just play our game of football.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. Jayden Daniels, obviously, it's a very different situation. Pac-12, SEC, two very different conferences and stuff like that. So when you look at Jayden Daniels, obviously he had a lot of, vision issues as far as, like, finding the open man and stuff like that. But if he can zone in and find his groove, I guess, definitely I realize that when LSU runs tempo offense, when you keep it going, it keeps him sharper. He gets to use his legs more, and that's his biggest strength, his ability to scramble. Now, does he sometimes scramble when he has a 50-yard check down possible? Absolutely. But at the same time, I mean, if he can continue to play his game and stay confident with himself and don't let this back injury hinder him, I definitely think he can power through.
Correct. That's where I think the back injury came in last week when he did have some of those checkdowns or even just a pass maybe over 20 yards and he didn't throw it. He didn't take that chance. He seems to be healthy. He's healthy enough to be playing this week. What I could say that he was rattled against New Mexico. I believe that was a lot of mentality of it. Just he thought that this would be an easy game, possibly similar to Southern game where they were up by about 30 points in the first quarter. But what I like about Jayden Daniels and this LSU team is that they started off their first game of the season in the Superdome. So that is somewhat of an advantage. It
Yeah.
wasn't against an SEC team.
It was 50-50.
Exactly. So you did have that little bit of camaraderie, and you had that Florida State fan base and then that LSU fan base as well. Let's talk about this running back room now with Armani Gunwin. He is expected to miss a few weeks this week, included with a hamstring injury. What does this mean for this LSU offense, and do they have to rely more on Jayden Daniels' mobility?
I don't think last week was, a huge – no, I think last week was a huge step for LSU's offense. We found a sense of running game, like Lewis said earlier, from all the backs. They all know that they have a role to play in this running back room, and they play it really well. So, with Armani going out, I think these guys are just going to have to provide that spark, that he might have, brought to the table. Just kind of step up.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that John Emery is definitely going to be taking a huge role this week. I mean, obviously, he was one of the best recruits coming out of high school, and obviously he hasn't, advanced into that full potential with the suspension and stuff like that. So, I mean, the way that I look at it, you got the two stud receivers with Neighbors and Keyshawn Boutte, and with John Emery, I think it's definitely an opportunity for the offense to use all their weapons and just go straight, and, I mean, definitely could be a high-scoring shootout.
What I like about this running back room is that even though Armani Gunwin goes down, it is a loss, but we have a little bit of depth there as well. You have John Emery Jr., who Brian Kelly is slowly getting into the mix. I would expect to see him a little more this week because of this injury. And then you have a guy like Noah Cain, transferred from Penn State, and Josh Williams, who's now a junior and has been here for a few years. They know what they have to do. They know what their jobs are. They know what their roles are. And the question here is, though, is John Emery, is this his week to solidify himself as a starter with the Goodwin injury?
Yeah, I think so. I expect John Emery to just have a phenomenal game this week. I think we've been waiting for him to show that spark, and this week I really think he does go off. Auburn's rush defense is decent, but I've seen, highlights of their linebackers in the open field, and they don't impress me. That's where he thrives. So he's going to make a lot of guys miss.
I definitely agree with Andre. This is his big game to break out.
It is.
He's got the opportunity to go out and maybe even snag that running back one spot. I mean, obviously there's a lot of talent in that room, kind of banged up with Armani out. The transfer from Penn State, Cain, I mean, he's got the talent, but I think that this is John Emery's chance to go in there and say, hey, I'm RB1, and this is my chance, and I'm going to take it.
Correct. Goodwin, has been starting for the last few weeks, even though John Emery has been back into this mix. But Emery does have the chance to solidify himself as a starter, and also he has the opportunity to be a leader. He's played against SEC teams before. This offensive line, inexperienced. Jayden Daniels never played an SEC game. John Emery knows the ins and outs of it. He was with that 2019 national championship team, and this is his opportunity to not only play a great game, as Andre Lewis had mentioned, but also go out there and lead the team and also block. You know you have Miles Frazier, you're down a lineman to say, and go out there and make sure that you're protecting your quarterback as well. Let's now talk about the wide receiver room. So we have Kayshon Boutte, who is back this week after he was absent last week because he welcomed his son into the world. Congratulations to him. But this whole season, Boutte and Daniels have had trouble connecting. It is clear to say that Auburn is not the best team in the SEC this season. You have teams like Alabama and Tennessee, of course. Is this their week that they have to find their connection before they get into the bulk of their SEC games?
Yeah, Kayshon has been dead silent, so he needs to prove himself with all that talent he has because, he hasn't proved it this year. He came into the season, with all this hype, and everybody was expecting so much, and I think he kind of did too much. He was trying to do too much to, fulfill that kind of vision. But when you have an LSU wide receiver room that's so balanced and so good, it's hard to, put up crazy numbers, that you see from, wide receiver ones from, like, smaller schools.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely look at Kayshon. Getting him involved in the game, it's like you put the ball in your best player's hands, you're gonna do well.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna do well. With him, I think it gets in his head a lot. He definitely let week one get to him and stuff like that. But at the same time, as you grow as a player, you also grow as a person. You got to power through those insecure things and stuff like that. And I just see that if he can go out and play like an absolute stud, it's going to take the pressure off of the other playmakers. Obviously, you want the other playmakers to be involved with the Malik, and you can't forget about Jere Jenkins. It's another stud out of that wide receiver room. I mean, you definitely can't count them out, but I'm telling you this. If Kayshon and Jayden Daniels can find their groove, I definitely think it's going to be a problem for the SEC the rest of the way.
Boutte has had 10 receptions for 93 yards, has not had a touchdown yet this season. So with that we've talked about the depth, but this is a week that they have to connect. Imagine Boutte playing at his full potential, and then you have Malik Neighbors on the other side. That's a worry for a defense, right?
Yep.
And now to even mention guys like Brian Thomas Jr., who got in because of Boutte's absent last year, as well as Jack Besh. What do we expect to see from a guy like Brian Thomas Jr.? Will he see the field more this weekend?
I think in certain situations he's going to see the field. It's depending on your matchups because you already have Kayshon, you already have Jack Besh, you already have Malik Neighbors and Jere Jenkins. So if there's an advantage in the matchups with the DBs, I say go to him, because he's tall. He's going to go get that one-on-one ball, down the field. But if it, we'll see him, in certain occasions. But I see those big three guys first, though.
I mean, I definitely agree. I mean, you obviously got all the talent in front of him, but at the same time, there's opportunities for these guys to come out and make a statement. And Brian Thomas Jr. went out, and he did that last week. And definitely it was a good chance to, hey, I'm here too. Yeah, you got these three studs that are going to be good wide receivers in the National Football League. Don't forget about me. I can come in, I can make some waves too.
He led the team last week in receptions with 3 receptions and 76 yards, he led the team. So he did make his statement game. The problem is the depth here in this wide receiver room, but that's a good problem to have if you're LSU's offense. Let's move on to this Auburn defense, talking about them, and continue to talking about Boutte and Neighbors, who will be playing together this weekend. Who should the Auburn defense be more focused on?
I don't even think it's a thing of focusing on one man because I think that's where LSU is going to have you beat. They have so many guys that can beat you. So for Auburn, they're going to have to just trust their DBs, which is not very deep. It's not good. So they typically run a 4-3 defense, which is stop the pass primarily, and they do a lot of delayed blitzing. So you can expect to see a lot of delayed blitz. Try and get to Jayden Daniels first before he gets downfield.
Yeah, and obviously when you put the pressure on the quarterback, it's obviously going to force him to chuck up throws that are 50-50 balls, maybe even worse, and create interceptions. I mean, but if you focus all your attention on one guy, you're going to draw the attention off Malik Neighbors or Boutte, and then you're burned for a 75-yard touchdown.
Yeah.
So when you look at it, I mean, you got to, like Andre said, you got to trust your DBs. You just got to move as the game goes.
For Auburn, I would look at a guy like Jalen Simpson. He was there during the LSU when LSU had won a natty. He was a freshman. He has 8 tackles on the season, and he had mentioned before that he loved to see how dominant that LSU defense was in 2019, and he wants to try to replicate that. He didn't say that this week, but he said that during the summer in an article with Auburn. So that this is his opportunity this week, and I would like to see him go up against either Neighbors or Boutte. I would expect Boutte. But let's talk about now this Auburn defensive line. This is their strong suit for this team. Their offensive line has their struggles, which we'll get to in a moment, but now this defensive line is their strong suit with guys like Derek Cole. How does this match up against the LSU offensive line this week?
I think they match up well against our offensive line. You know, the defensive ends are really good, but I think our offensive line still does well this weekend. For Auburn, I would still say it's a slight advantage to LSU.
I'm going to have to disagree on that a little bit. You look at our offensive line. We are young. We're a young offensive line. And if these guys on the edge can get around and beat us, I mean, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to move down the field, convert that third down, if you can convert that fourth down. I mean, when you look at it, I mean, I think that they have the advantage, but at the same time,
Is it slight, though?
it's slight.
Yeah.
See, I have to agree with Lewis. The defensive line for Auburn, if they come away with the win, they will win this game. Derek Hall, Iko Tua, or Latea, rather, they will help win this game because of our inexperienced offensive line in LSU. They have two freshmen. We've talked about that with the tackles. And now you have a change. Garrett Dellinger won't be there. You have to get to their weakness. And that's where a guy like John Emery Jr. comes in handy because he does have to be there, be that extra guy to be there and block. And also another tight end like Cole Taylor also could be there to block as well. And that, again, Auburn can win the game if their defensive tackles, their defensive line is strong enough and breaks through this LSU offense. Now, we know that LSU has changed drastically from last season with new head coaches, new quarterbacks, new systems. How does the Auburn defense have to prepare differently for this team than they would have last year?
Yeah, so Auburn just lost a whole lot of people, too, just like us. So it's going to be weird just looking at completely different teams than last year. But I think if you're Auburn, if you're preparing first, you can see Jayden Daniels can run it. You got to blitz him. You got to get to him quick, and you got to get to him early in the game.
I agree. You just want to make him think a lot. Like, he's got to think on his feet. And when he runs, I mean, you're going to put him in a situation where he's going to, I feel like a broken record. If you make Jayden Daniels uncomfortable, you're going to get good results most of the time. And at the same time, you look at the two different teams. LSU's quarterback last year with Max Johnson was not a mobile running quarterback like Jayden Daniels was. And you look at that alone, and it's just a massive difference. I mean, and you look at Auburn, they're a little banged up at the quarterback position, and I know we'll get to that, but I mean, it's no Bo Nix. Bo Nix ran all over us last year. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see how we contain that QB scramble too.
And that was one of the ways that Auburn beat us, and in the fourth quarter especially with that Bo Nix scramble where the LSU defense essentially fell apart. But also just talking about this Auburn defense compared to the Auburn offense, which isn't very good, you could say, where they do have that struggle. Now they're on their third string quarterback, and there's not a lot of depth in that wide receiver room. How does this Auburn offense wear out its Auburn defense this weekend?
I think so. Our defense is really elite. So if that's the case on Saturday, if they keep doing what they've been doing, we're going to see Auburn's defense get gassed. They rank 85th in completion percentage, allowing 60% of passes, which is really good news for Jayden Daniels because he is Mr. Efficient himself.
I mean, I agree. As long as we keep them, if we keep them on the field and then we do our job, keeping their offense off the field, we can gas that defense out, and I think we'll just run all over them.
Correct. Moving on to this LSU defense, we will have Greg Brooks Jr., Joe Fouché, and Jay Ward all playing together for the first time this season as Joe Fouché is coming back from his suspension. How do they improve this already strong LSU defense?
I'm super excited to watch all these guys together like I did in summer camp. That was the original guys to go out there, to start the season. Well, not start the season, but that was who the starters were looking like before Fouché got that, suspension. Fouché is going to play that safety position. He's going to thrive in zone coverages and open field tackling just like Brooks does. And with both of them in the back at safety, it's going to be a problem for other teams.
I definitely agree. I mean, you look at last year with Derek Stingley, and we had Cordell Floyd, two very big players on the in the backfield for us last year, and obviously they're not there anymore because they've gone on to the league. But you just look at that. Once we're regaining that ability to be a full-strength, fully functioning defense, and not to say that we're not a fully functioning defense now, but we're getting better. We can't forget about Harold Perkins.
Yep.
As the true freshman, he has been amazing.
Now, what I like about Joe Fouché is he's going to go over there and he's going to attack the run game. That's what he likes to do. He likes to get tackles. I believe he had 80 back in 2019. and while he was at Arkansas. And that's what he's going to do. That's how he helps improve this defense. And for this Auburn offense, there's just so many guys you have to look out for. Not to even mention, we haven't gotten to the defensive line yet in B.J. Ojolari and Ali Gay. Well, if you can stop them, then there's guys like Jay Ward, Joe Fouché, now Greg Brooks, Harold Perkins, as Lewis has mentioned, in this backfield that you have to worry about, that you have to look out for. And is the goal, like, what does this defense need to contain in this Auburn offense to win this game?
Tank Bigsby. He's got the most experience as an SEC running back, and he's just flat out elite. We need to watch him in the checkdowns on passes, shut him down, with the defensive line, just stop the run game completely. We need to force, Robbie Ashford to pass it. Keep him in the pocket, please, because he can run.
I mean, we definitely don't want an Auburn repeat
right.
of a scrambling
Last
quarterback.
Year, yeah.
Like you said, just contain the run. Obviously, I mean, I'd rather be beat in the air than in the run, because the run, I'm not trying to de-simplify it, but it's easier to contain the run than it is to contain the pass.
Yep.
Obviously, you got to deal with fast wide receivers, but as long as we contain the run from the quarterback and the backs, I definitely think we'll be in a better position to win the game.
Tank Bigsby is a guy I'm looking out for. He's the veteran running back. He needs to get involved this week if Auburn wants to win this game. He had only 44 yards last week against Missouri. If you're Tank Bigsby, you got to get involved, especially when you have a quarterback like Robbie Ashford. It's not like you have what could have been the starter this year in TJ Finley, as he will miss this week as well with a shoulder injury. Now, Auburn defeated LSU last year, and they came back from a 2-point deficit in the fourth quarter. And it was the first time in 20 years that Auburn had defeated LSU in Tiger Stadium. Is there a personal motive for their defense to win this weekend?
I could be wrong, but I don't think they look at it like that completely, but more towards, improving to 2-0 in SEC play after this week. Maybe for Kayshon Boutte now in that wide receiver room, but no, I don't really see it as like a personal game.
I definitely think that it's just the same attitude. You go out and you win a football game. Let's go 1-0 today. That should be the mindset every week. Shouldn't go out there trying to lose. I mean, sure, some of these guys can go in with a chip on their shoulder. Couldn't get him last year. Let's get him this year. At the same time, you got to go with that same attitude. We're going to win today, and that should be the mindset every day.
When I worked that game versus Auburn and LSU, and I just saw the mistakes that rattled this defense in the fourth quarter, where they thought that they just had this game secured. It was squared away. They were ready to move on to next week, and that's not what happened. And Bo Nix showed that, even though he's transferred to Oregon now and gone. But the same thing could happen this week with Auburn, where they go in, they think, okay, we have a backup quarterback in Robbie Ashford. The offensive line for Auburn isn't too great. They don't have a lot of depth in the wide receiver core. This could be an easy win. There's not going to be a ton we have to do. And if they go up by 2 or 3 touchdowns, they think they have it squared away. But if you know anything about the history between Auburn and LSU, you know that's not true and that anything can happen in this game. So that's what the defense has to be prepared for. They have to be ready. They have to be on their toes for all 4 quarters. Now let's talk about this Auburn offense. Just about Tank Bigsby. Is the way that they win this game is him getting involved?
Oh, yeah, for sure. He's the heart and soul of this offense. He's going to have to make crazy plays, I would say, just for them to, score, because I don't see them scoring, in any crazy ways besides Tank Bigsby.
I mean, I agree. As long as our guys in the backfield do their job, I mean, this offense has the ability to run all over you. Tank Bigsby has the ability to go, break away, chip at you with yards and stuff like that. And if he finds the end zone, I mean, that's going to cause problems for LSU, and that's obviously going to make them have to come back. At the same time, if we can keep Tank Bigsby contained and we can keep Robbie Ashford contained, I mean, it's definitely a better chance to win.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, you have Tank Bigsby, and you also have a guy that we haven't mentioned yet, like Jarquavius Hunter, who is a sophomore running back, and he only had 7 carries for 13 yards last week. I would like to see Bigsby and Hunter both get involved in that offense, and that's how I would say that they win this game, if they do win this game, getting that run game going on the ground. And there was a point last week in that Auburn versus Missouri game where Auburn narrowly came away with the win against Missouri, 17-14, that they had their 4th-string quarterback in. And is Robbie Ashford, who will be starting for them this week, as he did end up coming back in that Missouri game healthy, is he comfortable and confident enough to be able to stay in the pocket and make accurate passes?
With our defensive line, it's going to be a problem for him to be comfortable. He's going to be out of the pocket most of the time, if I had to guess, so our linebackers are going to have to get to him.
Yeah, I mean, and herein lies the guy, Harold Perkins. If those guys can help put pressure on Robbie Ashford, it's going to, he's being thrust into a new role. TJ Finley's down. And if we can get him thinking and stuff like that, we have to give him different looks. Can't be running out the same defensive set out there every time. If we can keep giving them different looks, I definitely think it's going to throw a lot of confusion and keep them thinking. And when you think too much, you make mistakes, and that's what we want.
Correct. And we had mentioned how thin this wide receiver core is for Auburn. Let's talk about LSU transfer Coy Moore. What do we expect to see from him? And I know, Andre, you would like to say something about him, so go right ahead.
Coy Moore is just – he was talking blasphemy on social media about the LSU, saying he was the best LSU wide receiver in the room last year, which was totally untrue. He said he was better than Kayshon Boutte. So, I don't think he's going to do very well this weekend just because he said that. I think Javarius Johnson, Auburn's best wide receiver, is probably going to do the best out of all their wide receivers.
And to remind you all about Moore, he had entered the transfer portal mid-season last year, so he didn't even play the remainder of the season for LSU, so we didn't get to see his full potential. Lewis, do you have anything to say about Moore?
It's definitely a hot take to come out and say something like that. But at the same time, if he's confident in his skill, more power to him. But at the same time, if he gets shut down this weekend, he's going to eat his words.
It is. Draymond Green said it best. If you don't go into something thinking that you're the best, then why are you even doing it? But that's why I like guys so much like Terrell Owens, because he would go out there, he'd talk a lot of smack, and then he'd go prove it to you on the field. And that's what Moore has to do this week, especially when you have Booty on the other side, who was the second best wide receiver in the SEC
Look,
last season.
Coy Moore is no Terrell Owens.
You're right, but I'm just saying that's
we don't know yet.
Exactly.
But let's just say.
I'm just saying
we know.
That's what Owens did. He would talk a lot, everyone would get upset, but he went out there and proved why he deserved the right to talk the way he did.
If you can talk the talk, you can walk the walk.
Wrapping up here, let's just talk real quick about this Auburn offensive line. This is one of their weak spots, right? You have now Johnson, who is injured at center. Tate Johnson won't be playing. Nick Brahms retired this offseason, as he was a center for many years at Auburn. How does this affect their offense this week?
Yeah, their offensive line, with our defensive line being so stacked, they're going to have some trouble. Kind of like what we talked about a few weeks ago. Offensive lines need time to mesh together. They didn't get that time, so they're going to struggle.
I agree.
Yeah.
You look at LSU as a perfect comparison at the beginning of this season. Right at the gate, we looked terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
LSU looked terrible, and everybody's thinking, oh, they'll improve. Now Southern, we obviously ran all over them.
Yep.
At the same time, like you said, offensive lines need to mature together. They need to mesh together. And Auburn's, they're kind of going through the motions with that right now. And especially with the pressure that LSU's defense is going to bring, it's going to be a serious issue for them.
You're in your third-string center now. You can definitely expect to see a lot of high snaps. It's struggling for a quarterback now who's coming into this position. And Robbie Ashford, who is newer, this could be a difficult task for this Auburn offense. Now, Brian Hassens for this Auburn defense, for this Auburn team, rather, is this a make-or-break game for him?
Yeah, for Brian Harsin, yeah. It's a must-win for him because you look at their schedule, it don't get any easier down the road. You got to go to number one Georgia next week. I think he's going to be done after the season, after that Iron Bowl weekend, because I don't think they want to buy him out. But I think this is a must-win for your locker room.
Absolutely. I mean, if you want to retain the respect of the locker room, you definitely want to go out there and put on your best show and lead your team to victory. At the same time, you're getting torched by other teams. You almost lost to Mizzou.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
They almost lost against another FCS team or something like that earlier, too.
Right.
Yep, San Jose State, that was.
Zach Blackberry said it best on the Auburn radio network, is that he's most likely going to lose his job after this season. It's an anonymous decision by Auburn, but you have to go in there this week and you have to encourage your guys and try to get a win against LSU, who's now 3-1. And there's been a lot of weirdness, if you know anything about the history, as I mentioned before, in this Auburn-LSU game. Does any strange moments happen today?
I don't think so. Maybe like a John Emery, like long touchdown, crazy touchdown or something. I don't see anything crazy tomorrow.
I mean, who knows? It's football. I mean, they say any given Sunday. What about any given Saturday?
Yeah.
Anything can happen. We saw it last week. Jack Besh almost had he took one to the house on a punt return. And do I think that's going to happen this week? You never know. But at the same time, stranger things have happened.
There's been buildings set on fire at the Auburn game. Les Miles running out of time where they weren't able to win the game. You also had just Auburn one time stepping on the eye of the LSU Tiger. That caused a lot of controversy as well. The craziest things I see happen this year is Harsin gets fired after this game. And there also was Hurricane Ion, sending all of our thoughts and prayers to everyone who was affected. But that was also a factor into part of the weirdness of this game, and thankfully it did pass Auburn. With that being said, let's get to our score predictions. Andre, who comes away with the win this weekend?
I got LSU 34-20.
I think that's a bold one. I'm going to take LSU 28-17. I definitely think I don't think LSU is going to put up 1,000 points, And obviously 34 isn't 1,000, but I definitely think LSU is going to come with a win with 2 scores.
I think LSU wins 30-14. Auburn struggles to put points on the board. Possibly they get a garbage time touchdown, and this LSU defense comes in clutch, helps this team win the game, and solidifies a win. They move to 4-1, and Auburn will drop to 3-2. That is all we have for you today. Thank you so much for joining us. This is LSU will take on Auburn at Jordan-Hare Stadium at 6 o'clock p.m. on Saturday. Patricia Caputo, Andre Champagne, and Louis DeVita, this has been the KLSU Tailgate Show.